Ivey. Go check her out over on Instagram. It's kind of a funky name for what you are, but that's all right. We'll tell them what it is. Lotte Malia May, L-O-T-T.
Oh yeah, Lottie Amelia May.
Say it one more time.
Lottie Amelia May. It's just my middle name.
I was going to slaughter it, but I'll spell it. I'll spell it so people can look you up. LOTTEAMELIAMAY. And she is a naturopath, you guys. The last time I spoke to you, I actually interviewed you 10 years ago. You were still in school for naturopathy, and yet now you're a naturopath. You did that in the UK, is that right?
So I'm about to graduate. I've got six weeks left of clinic. So one thing when I spoke to you, I know we spoke when I was studying, but I remember when we first did a podcast, and I was working in London then.
Yeah.
I had a completely different job then. I was working in compliance.
It was another universe ago, and then I reconnected with you recently. I'm like, girl, let's get you back, because you've got a lot of things to talk about now in the world of health, and of course, general health, being a naturopath almost. Health. So we got lots to talk about here today. Why don't you tell the people who haven't heard of you before, why did you get interested in being a naturopath? What was wrong with a mainstream, like, medical doctor kind of degree?
Oh, I think I first got interested in just natural health. You know, when you just go on your health journey, and I was about 20, like I'd lost my dad. I was becoming really sick. I didn't know what was wrong with me. Doctors couldn't help me. I just literally felt like I was dying. And I just started eating healthy, like, as I could. My gut was a complete mess. My skin was awful. Like, my menstrual cycle was gone. And the doctors were just saying I'm fine. So I just gradually got, like, really into health and stuff. And then when I was working in, like, London, I was just like, this isn't me anymore. And I went to Australia, like, on a working holiday visa, and I loved it. And I was like, oh my God, like, imagine if I could, like, study out here. Like, that would be so cool. I had this, like, office job. And then, like, I tried to get a second-year visa, like, milking cows and stuff. That didn't work out. Obviously, it's like a sign from the universe, like a blessing in disguise. Because then I got back and I was like, okay, I don't have a second-year visa. If I went back to Australia, I'd have to do a student visa. Yeah. So then I, like, saved up, because I was just really unhappy working in office. And I got really into, like, fasting and stuff when I was in the UK, like, when I was back out there. So I got into fasting, detoxing and stuff. And then I came back and was doing my degree. And then everything, I feel like we're always on a health journey once we start a health journey. And then I came back, and this is my 4th year now studying, so I'm almost done. And then I suddenly not suddenly, but like last year, I got into, like, plant psychedelics, and just got really shown about trauma and how much, like, mental health affects us, and how much trauma affects the body physically, especially when it's suppressed and we're not aware of it.
I mean, I started doing my own work in that realm of, like, looking into the physical health ramifications of unresolved trauma. I mean, it's mind blowing, the connection. And I think about all the people that, whether you just had verbal abuse, don't say just, it's verbal. It was abuse, it was trauma. Or like I did, I was verbally abused, but also physically beaten as a teenager. And then you've got a lot of girls, especially with sexual abuse. You've got all these abuses from multiple angles that if you don't deal with that early enough in your life, it stays with you. I'm fully convinced my insulin resistance today is a direct result of a couple of things. I had to turn to food as my comfort. I didn't go to drugs and alcohol, it was sugar. And I ate a shitload of sugar. So, and some of it was the trauma that I never dealt with till probably 2 years ago was when I first started doing real solid work, Charlotte, trying to work on that myself.
Yeah, and I feel like as well with the trauma, like sometimes some people just don't want to deal with it.
Right.
And some people feel like they're not ready to release it. And I was saying the other day, you have to be really important. Like, it's really important to be in a safe space when you release this trauma. Yeah. So sometimes you're not aware of it because you're in a city, it's like hustle and bustle, you're not around people that you feel safe with. So things don't even come into your mind to entertain the fact that there is trauma there or like bad memories there. So you could carry on forever
Well,
without realizing sometimes.
some of it is you don't even realize that it's the trauma that makes you who you are. Like there were many years in my 20s, especially. I'm about to turn 50 this year, but in my 20s, I was always angry, like all the time. Just had this intense anger from within. I couldn't control it. I would scream out at things. I would be upset at things that were so frivolous in hindsight. And now I realize, because my body, my brain, my whole being of who I was identified by what that trauma did to me. And it wasn't until I got further away from that, I guess as you get older, you also kind of mellow a little bit. And as things started to chill, that's when I realized, holy crap, I'm the way I am because of the trauma. That's not who I really am. When I really dug into who am I at the core, I realized none of what I had been in the past was who I really was.
Do you find as well with your insulin resistant, like since dealing with kind of some of the stuff that's come up, that you found it easier to deal with that? Like, has it been easier?
Yes, so much easier. And I would say it makes the nutrition and the lifestyle things that I do all the more effective now. The fact that I now have an okay. Yes, I had many years of dealing with the insulin resistance because I didn't really bring in the trauma healing aspect of it. I was doing diet, I was doing exercise, I was doing all these things, but never getting to that root cause. And then once the root cause was identified and I could do a lot of that mindset work, Charlotte, that's when I finally feel like I'm authentically who I am for the first time in my life.
Wow, yeah, okay. Because I think as well, like sometimes they're like you said, some things don't go away, and you can do all the natural remedies and stuff, and you can try everything, and you can get to the root cause, and it's still there. And that's when I always think, well, you need to look at, like you've done, the like actual mental stuff going on, and even ancestral stuff as well. Because I think, and I see it as well with like patients, like a lot of the time we can have stuff from our parents which is unresolved, and then it gets passed on to us, even from like just not even one generation, like the generation before that or before that. And then we end up, and that's why I'm interested in what I mentioned before as well about methylation, because when we have these like gene snips and then we begin to have health issues and mental health issues because of these gene snips that we're often born with, and it's normally, when you look back at that person, like they've had ancestral, like generational trauma that they then are left to deal with, kind of thing.
Yes. So there's a connection with probably people, when you say methylation, they think of MTHFR, but there's a bunch of other out there as well. So that can be impacted by trauma, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so I mean, from the research that I've looked at and just from like patients I've seen and stuff, so with the MTHFR gene, I mean, you can test that. It will say you've got a SNP, but it doesn't actually tell you which part of the methylation cycle is kind of like not functioning correctly. So you could be like under methylating or over methylating, and within that methylation cycle, it could be you're over methylating in methionine, like the precursor for protein, or SAMe or something. So I mean, so for example, if you're under methylating in SAMe, that's a precursor for serotonin. So you're naturally having low mood. And I got into this as well because I did it myself. I always thought I'm naturally like, I'm a happy-go-lucky person, but I do have periods when I'm quite down. And it's interesting because you have people and they have these kind of personality types, so you can spot this like the more you kind of get into it. But like, so for example, if you're an undermethylator, personality traits would be like you're a perfectionist, you're an overachiever, or you love kind of achieving. You have periods of depression. You can have extra saliva, like, so kind of like extra saliva in the mouth or like the eyes. I mean, nothing is always like exact. It can be like different person to person. But if you go and see a functional doctor, they'll do like a blood test. So they test the like methylating folate and just the whole the methylation things, and you find out, okay, so I'm under methylating, and it's so easy to correct. This is what, like, it kind of upsets me sometimes about normal medicine, like Western medicine, not when it's not functional, is because they'll just put you on like antidepressants.
Oh, allopathic care, they don't have any about methylation. If you started talking about MTHFR and methylated folate, all that, they would look at you like you have two heads. They have no clue.
No. But yeah, I mean, like, this is, so for example, you find out you need SAMe, you can take a SAMe supplement. It takes about 3 to 6 months to correct, and your mood, that person's mood, is like so much more stable. And you also have things like you can metabolize as a woman, like metabolize estrogen better. Your digestion's better because you can detoxify better. So there's so many other things, like when you do functional testing and you correct something the right way, that can help with mental health massively. And then it's also like, as a naturopath, for example, I would then look at, okay, so that's like the physical things going on with that trauma, and that's trauma has caused. Then what's like the mental trauma, working through that, and how it should be released in the body. So using things like flower essences are really powerful, which I never thought I'd say. I'd always be like, oh, flower essences are just like fluffy la-di-da things, but really, really powerful, and can be used really well with children as well. I love bush flower essences, some here in Australia, but you can use back flower essence as well, and just use them in like a drink or something, like every day, or just put like in the morning and before bed. And that's like a really gentle way just to have some dreams going on and stuff, just to support things and help.
Well, and I know the adaptogens are really popular as well, especially like ashwagandha, very, very popular one. I used to do this podcast with Dr. Will Cole, a functional medicine doctor, called Keto Talk, and he would always talk about ashwagandha. I'm like, we need all this ashwagandha talk, because that literally came up every week. But that one in particular is very powerful for people. You know, if you deal with trauma and you got your diet right and you're dealing with your trauma, that could be a powerful modality as well.
Yeah, I think that you're so right there, because so many people as well with herbs, I think the herbs are really underestimated to support these things. And also, like, even with ashwagandha, like the energetics of herbs. So for example, if you have like, I started using these like a women's blend herb, it had in there like shatavari, peony, I think it has some ashwagandha in there actually, like as an adaptogen, and just some other really nice herbs. And suddenly I was like, in my feminine, like always like girl power stuff, or woman power, should I say. And just, yeah, I was like, I was like, broke up with a guy. I was just like feeling like really empowered. I was like, no, like I deserve this, and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, and all this other stuff came out, like emotionally, like as a woman, that I hadn't dealt with and I needed to deal with. And like, although the herbs did really support me physically, like helping regulate like a menstrual cycle and stuff, they also really did release a lot of stuff, like energetically as a woman, like, and that's just through herbs. So I think, yeah, herbs are amazing to support that with anything, like, the mood, like you said, the adaptogens, and also get other things, other emotions in the body that are waiting to be released.
I am so interested in what you have recently done in the whole psychedelic mushrooms. Like, people kind of freak out, Charlotte, when they think about it. Make the pitch, because I'm very interested in this as well. Obviously, under the guidance of naturopath or someone professional, not recreational. You guys stick with it. But like, how do you convince a patient? Act like I'm your patient, and you're trying to convince me I need to be taking the psychedelic mushrooms for some purpose, to help heal trauma, to help chill me out, whatever the purpose is.
Okay, well, first thing I would say is that you can't ever, if somebody doesn't want to do it or they're not ready, like, there's no point in giving it to someone, because they'll never get the benefits they need, because they're not actually ready to explore it. I always feel like when someone is ready to deal with some trauma, they'll come to you, or they'll know, or they'll be talking about it, or like kind of explore it. I always think with like the psychedelics, say for example the mushrooms, Yeah, and you're so right as well, like not recreational, because a lot of people can think, oh, just take this illegally and just like, go out and take some mushrooms or something. But if you take it in a setting, like a safe environment, because feeling safe as well when you take like the mushrooms, the psilocybin, for
Yeah.
example, is like one of the number one things. Because when you're safe, that's obviously when you can release trauma.
Yes.
So taking it in a ceremonial setting, playing some ceremonial music, like which is from like a ceremonial playlist, for example, with just really nice gentle music, blindfolded, being with a practitioner or someone that knows what they're doing, and knows any health issues and things going on, is really important. And then also being and having someone afterwards that you can speak to it about, because a lot of the time people are doing these psychedelics and they don't have the support they need afterwards, and because it's like a taboo or it's like not legal in a lot of places, they can't have the support, and people think, oh, you waste, doing drugs, blah blah blah. But it's a lot more than that, because it does give you the power to go into different areas which you've never been able to access before, and I think that's why it can be really confronting for some people.
Yes. So here in America, we have few states that do allow it. Is it pretty open in Australia?
No,
Oh, it's not. Okay.
they tried to yeah, no, they did try and pass it with the TGA. So there was a big so I'm on the committee for Mind Medicine Australia, and they tried to pass a legislation there to change the schedulization of it. This was, I think, about 6 months ago, but it didn't get passed, unfortunately. So yeah, I mean, they're still working on it and stuff, but now it's just more like you have to do it obviously where it's in a legal setting.
Keto can be hard. Tabulating, measuring, baking, taking 3 months to perfect one recipe, and to mixed reviews.
Did something die in here? Oh, I think it moved.
And by that point, you give up your diet, find a dark corner, and stuff yourself with sugar, carbs, and regret.
This, isn't what it looks like.
Well, this is where Keto Chow saves the day. The easiest, tastiest, ketoist meal replacement on the market.
It's like ice cream melted in my mouth.
Yes, but melted ice cream with all the protein, nutrients, vitamins, and electrolytes your body needs.
Oh, that's cool.
And with 3 starter kits, each with restaurant tips, keto food guides, and a ton of flavors to try, your taste buds and your waistline will thank you.
Thank you.
So grab your starter kit today at jimmylovesketochow.com.
It's so easy.
Keto Chow. Make keto easy.
Well, I think about marijuana, for example, like it was taboo, hands off, for no purpose. And then it was like, okay, it's for medicinal purposes. And then that morphed into now it's for recreation. So, I mean, there's morphs along the way of how you make these things come about. But what I was going to say, California is one of those states where in America, they do allow some of the psychedelic stuff. And so there was a friend of mine just 2 years ago, went through a really bad breakup, devastated her. She didn't know how she was going to handle it. She ended up going to one of these guided psychedelic kind of clinics, and they gave her a very small dose to start just to see how she'd react. Didn't do very much. So then the next time they substantially increased, and she told me afterwards, she went into like a transcendental state, and it was cathartic, because then things started coming out and she could feel the release from that. And then she did one more, third one before she was done. And it was more of just like, make sure there's no other remnants of some trauma in there. And she came out the other end of that after going through this really traumatic experience with losing a fiance. And she was a new lady. I mean, I saw it in her eyes. I was shocked at how healing it was. It really opened my eyes to the power of these psychedelics.
Yeah, and it's like, I always think it's like an onion. It's like you're always peeling stuff. And if you look at like, I don't know if you've had any like experiences yourself, but if you look at any, like each time you do it, something else is revealed. And like, I mean, I could look at myself now and think I'm a completely different person to when I first did it. And there's always things that could come up, and it's what I'm learning as well is like each time you do psychedelics are done, because I think as well there is a time and a place, like it's not something, it is a sacred thing, and traditionally, like all these plant medicines, they were sacred. They're not something to be done every week or anything, you know. And what I was going to say is, like, yeah, you do notice each time that if you, because a lot of the work is integration work, so you can have an amazing experience, but if you choose afterwards not to take into account anything that you've left, that you've learned, you're never, so if you don't take into account anything that you've learned, you'll never continue to grow or deal with anything. Or you can be shown like so much stuff each time you do it, but you could also decide never to action anything, or never to speak to a therapist or something about it, or, you know, make the changes. So it is also, that's kind of one of the reasons why I love them, because it's always down to you as well to deal with it and to put the work in, because it's always work, okay? Like, yeah.
Well, and look, if you went through all the trouble of bringing all that stuff to the surface to deal with it, you've got a vested interest in like following through and making sure that you come out on the other side. I can tell you the work that I've done the past 2 years. I haven't done psychedelics, but I did a lot of like therapy and talking with a life therapist / life coach. And she was amazing. And I've had friends in my life to help work with some of those things. The next step for me is to do something like a guided session. So thank you for explaining some of that and how that works.
That's okay. I was going to say as well quickly about the psilocybin, which I think a lot of people don't talk about. So psilocybin, like mushrooms, are a fungus. So people, especially if they're doing it recreationally, they think, oh, like, I just take it. And then they start getting all these, I see it all the time, like these fungal issues, especially women. Like, women will get thrush and all these other issues. And it's like, these medicines, like, they are sacred. So it's like, if you're taking it as a therapy, like for mental health as well, it's like, you should also be taking probiotics to restore that bacteria and an antifungal afterwards as well, to keep your body in balance and deal with stuff. I had to say that because I know like a lot of people can get a few issues in that area.
Yeah, absolutely. So why do you think, other than they just don't want to deal with the bubbling up of emotions of it, why do people neglect their emotions? It seems like culture puts all this huge emphasis on your physical health, go on a diet, exercise, you know, these kinds of things. But they never say anything about how you heal the brain, how you calm your mood. And of course, food and lifestyle can help with those things as well. But why do people neglect that aspect of health? Isn't it just as important to mind your mental health as your physical?
Yeah, I think some people, they just find it too much, that they just don't want to deal with it. But I think even when people say they don't have trauma, I think everyone has trauma.
Yes.
To some extent, everyone has got it. So it's like, no one's, you know, better than, I know some people have had a really hard childhoods and stuff and things happen, but also the people that think they're okay, something which it could be a trauma for me, it could be absolutely fine for you. Like, everyone's so different. But I think a lot of the time it can be too much, and they're not in the right environment as well, and they don't feel safe enough, and because of the trauma, it's very hard to even be aware of it, because you just wipe it from your memory. So when you're not aware of it, you don't think you've got anything to deal with a lot of the time. And I can see when you speak to people about psilocybin or ayahuasca even, they're kind of like freeze. But it's like, I sometimes feel like it's also the fear of taking these substances and the unknown for them, because they're completely safe when you're with a practitioner who knows what they're doing, and you're in a healthy state and you're in the right place and it's legal and stuff. It's completely like, it's very like hard, a little side effects and risks at all involved. So I do think a lot of the time it is not being ready. I mean, there's so much going on in the world now as well. So it's like, there's always things building up inside of us.
I have heard that there's something on in the world right now. Back to that end, just 5 houses down from me on my street here in South Carolina, sleepy little medium-sized town in America, there was a guy that murdered his wife and then killed himself. And it's like, wow, like we don't know the stresses, the mental state of the people around us. I never would have imagined. I didn't know the people other than I walked by their house. In fact, I walked by their house during my morning walk, literally like 15 minutes before it happened.
Wow.
If I had heard that, I would have been traumatized yesterday if I had heard that gunshot and all that would have happened from that. That would have been horrible. But that's just one example of the kinds of things that are happening in the world that people are, because they're not dealing with their stresses well, they're not dealing with trauma well, and they're just letting life get to them.
Yeah, and that's why it's like I said, with dealing with all aspects of it, because it's like you can't just deal with like going on a psychedelic journey and then not look at your health as well. And that's why I love the whole like holistic picture, because it's like doing the functional testing, look at, because as well, like, you know how you said about like that like awful tragedy that happened. So it's also like that person could have literally had a massive chemical imbalance, and that can cause the psychotic issues.
Yes.
Like the zinc, the B6, I don't know, maybe there was like schizophrenia due to pyrols or something, methylation, really bad, and then ancestral trauma on top of that, which was also probably causing genetic stuff. Like, and I think that's why as well. And then dealing with all of that, and then dealing with like using psychedelics to support that when they're ready, is like so important. But it's just so sad how like society, and I mean, it's such a taboo as well, these psychedelics, because they really do have the power when used correctly to really support healing. And it'd be amazing, it's amazing as well, as I was going to say, how many times health issues go away when you really get to the bottom of things, like you were saying with your insulin resistance.
Yeah, and like in my world, I talk about keto, carnivore, and things like that. Like a lot of people, they don't realize they are dealing with kind of mental health kind of issues until they clean up their diet. They start eating real, start having healthy fats, and their brain finally gets nourished well. Then they feel like this spontaneous like calm come over their body. They're chill, their brain works well, they're just generally happy. And it's like that should be a clue that like the way you eat, the way you live, all of that contributes to that malaise that you have in your brain. It's not just the trauma. Trauma's there, yes, but it's on top of eating crap that makes that brain even worse.
That's the thing, yeah. It's like if you're eating crap, you'll have all these toxins in your body. If you're not checking labels on things, if you're not eating basic and stuff, like basic food, like the vegetables, the above ground vegetables and stuff, the clean eating, you're going to have a really crappy microbiome. So you're going to have most of the serotonin, like 70%, I think it is made in the gut. You're not going to be a happy person. You're going to be full of toxins.
Yes.
So you can't, like you said, you can't think straight. I mean, I don't understand how, I mean, we've all probably been there. I remember when I was probably about 18 and I'd eat a McDonald's. So I'd never dream of that now, because I'd know straight away like how bad I would feel. And if you look at people that are like on eating like that, like you say, you know that they're not happy. They can't be 100% happy. And sometimes you don't realize how unhappy you are until you clean up your act and start eating decent food, and you're on a completely different vibration then, because you're eating foods from the earth, so you're connected to the earth so much more. That's the thing as well. It's like we are nature. Like people always, I think, forget that as well. It's like if you're eating from the earth, you are more connected to the earth. So it's like you're going to be more receptive to natural things and to your emotions and your mind and what you appreciate in life. I mean, I can't imagine somebody who's eating like a McDonald's every day and Coca-Cola and stuff, drinking Coca-Cola, being able to appreciate nature as much as someone that's eating like an organic lifestyle, which is why people that shop in organic stores are probably more likely to appreciate the nature and stuff, because they're on that different vibration.
Well, and once you make that switch over to the more organic, the more rich whole foods kind of thing, McDonald's maca is gross. It's just ew. Like you smell it, and you're like repulsed. It's all the vegetable oils. It's all the rancid like food-like products, and yeah, it just It's amazing because people think they can't come off those things when you try to talk to them about this. And I'm sure you do have these conversations with patients about it, if you moved over to more real whole foods. So, but they see the immediacy of that dopamine release that happens as a result of eating those things. And yeah, you get a big old dopamine release, but you can get dopamine in other ways as well. They think that's the only way that they feel good. They don't realize there's things you can do that are a lot healthier for you that will move you in the direction of long-term health, whereas eating that maca is going to make you go the other direction.
Yeah, it's so addictive, hey? And I think as well, I mean, how many people, the people I know that eat really well, they're also like very switched on to even everything going on. I mean, I'm not going to get political, but to everything going on in the world right now. The people that eating healthy are the ones, 90% of the ones that are switched on as well to seeing through bullshit.
Yeah.
So
I'm there with you.
I know you are, my fellow truther.
So I recently had a test done called the OAT test, the organic acids test. And so are you familiar with that test?
I've heard of it, but I haven't used it myself on patients.
So it like tests different parts of your gut health and how like neurotransmitters work and all this stuff. It's really fascinating. Look it up if you get a chance. And I know it will be something that if you have availability to it, you'll probably run it. It was about $300 for me to run it straight out of pocket and everything. Anyway, it came back with some interesting results I was shocked by. It said that I'm having problems with the neurotransmitter connection between my gut and my brain. The practitioner I was talking to, a good friend of mine, she said, but you're supposed to be sad and moody and you're like one of the happiest people I know. And I'm thinking, okay, are the ketones from my diet superseding that process and making me more nourished in my brain and thus overriding that neurotransmitter kind of pathway? It was fascinating to me.
Probably. I think that test sounds a bit like the have you heard of a GI map?
Have I had
in the
what?
gut? A GI map, it's called.
No.
It's probably a tiny bit similar, but it's more to do with like the bacteria and stuff.
Okay.
And not so much the neurotransmitters. But yeah, I think that's really interesting what you say about that keto diet, because so many times you can, like a patient can do a test and you're like, oh, that's so low. It's like, how are you even happy? Like you've got like so much stuff. But then if they've got like a healthy diet, like if you're doing keto, you're like living on those ketones, because I'm guessing it didn't test anything to do with those ketones on that test. Yeah. So it's like looking at the other factors and seeing, how is your keto going? How's the keto diet going? Yeah.
So for me, I have moved more kind of a carnivore approach the last 4 years. I just find I feel best on it. I don't do a whole lot of vegetables just because they never really did anything. I only put them on my plate for the purposes of I'm supposed to have them. Now, I do recognize that there's probably benefit to having small amounts of vegetables, at least to feed the gut microbiome. So I'm still working through that, but I just feel so good basically eating grass-fed beef and having quality. I have backyard chicken, so backyard chicken eggs, and in fact, before I came on the air, I ate some backyard chicken with grass-fed butter, and so I enjoy it. And I think there's kind of a lesson there of, hey, just do something that makes you feel good, that you enjoy. You as a naturopath would say, if you're enjoying it, feeling good, you're getting benefits, go for it.
Yeah, because so many people always think, oh, I have to do like X, Y, and Z, what that person's saying.
Right.
And it's like we say, it's like your body is not the same as their body.
Oh.
So why are you going to do what they're telling you to do when you've got completely different body composition, you've got completely different gut bacteria, you've got completely different lifestyle. Like we are, and that's what I've really learned actually through these years of studying to be naturopath. It's like we're all so different. So what you can't, like I always feel like with like clients, it's like helping guide them, like looking and feeling into their own body and feel what's right for them. Because I don't do keto so much anymore. I do low carb, but for me, I mean, I tried carnivore and it didn't work for me, but I don't have a great functioning liver. My liver's got really high cholesterol, and my liver, like every time I'd have fats, it would be like an absolute nightmare. I'd get like gut issues, like constipation, all this stuff. But I can actually do okay on carbohydrate. I mean, I don't do that, like, I'm not like a sugar crazy person. I'm still like low carb, but for me, it's like, yeah, it's like accepting that everyone is so different. And because I think with the whole carb thing, I think no one's amazing on sugar, but some people can do a bit better, and some people can, like you said, like with the carnivore thing that suits you.
Yeah.
It's like, do it, like, because other people are like, oh, carnivore's so bad, blah blah. It's like, but then they're built so differently to you. Some people as well, I've learned as well through the methylation thing, like they really can't do protein.
Yeah.
Some people, and some people really need protein. Like if I don't have protein, like meat, my iron just completely drops. Whereas some people can, you know, have like hardly any protein at all and be completely fine on their bloods.
Are you tired of playing the mask game? Me too. That's why I wanted to tell you about the Unmask. This is a breathable, completely breathable. It covers, you can't even see that it's breathable, but it's breathable. Whether you're going on a plane, having to go into a store and wearing this thing, playthemaskgame.com is how you can get this mask. They come in all kinds of colors and everything. In fact, right there, you can see right through it what it is, but when you're wearing it, it does not look like it's anything different, but it's breathable, baby. Playthemaskgame.com. It's why the whole idea of one size fits all diet has always been crazy to me anyway. And people say, well, Jimmy, you wrote a book about keto. You must want everybody to eat keto. And I'm like, shit, how you eat. You eat how you want to.
Yeah.
You boo. But like, I do see the benefits in it. But even since I wrote that book, I've even gotten to the point where I recognize there's benefits to being in and out, out and letting your body build that metabolic flexibility. There's an advantage there if you let your body experience these different metabolic states so that no matter what happens, your body can adapt.
Yeah, I think that as well, like the homeostasis. So always having times when, because I still do the intermittent fasting. I think I'll always do that. And like for me as well, it's like I do well. I could never have 3 meals a day. Hey, like that'd be so much for me. With maybe some people have got like a really quick. Yeah, exactly. And people can still look at me like, oh, you're not having dinner. Why aren't you having dinner? Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I can't have it. Like, it's going to mess up my digestion. And like, why am I going to just have dinner so someone else feels good?
My favorite one is when I'm not eating in the morning and people are like, aren't you going to have breakfast? And I'm like, it's not time to break my fast yet.
Exactly. And like, you know your body.
That's all breakfast is, or you call it in Australia, brekkie. It's not time for brekkie yet. I'm not brekking anything yet.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, when because I'll always think I'll always do that, and I always have done that. Like since I've got into health, anyway. Like I have one big breakfast normally now, and then like a smaller lunch, or if I'm like hungry, or depending on like where I am in my cycle, like I'll have like a lunch, like a big lunch as well. But yeah, like digestion is so much better. Like I don't know, I mean, but when you eat a nutrient-rich diet as well, you don't need to be eating 3 meals a day and then like having snacks in between.
Yeah.
But I also, yeah.
And when you're nourishing yourself well, people think they need calories, and like, no, calories are important, but they're not the main thing. Getting nutrients, which includes both the macro and the micro nutrients. And I think sometimes we have hunger at different meal times because we didn't nourish ourselves well with the right nutrients. And that includes protein, fat, carbohydrate, but it also includes like all those micronutrients in there. Did you not get enough of zinc in your meals? Did you get this one? Did you get that one? And I think if we're not mindful of nutrients that we're putting in our body, which is to your point from earlier, why you're in favor of like diversification, having, you know, healthy vegetables, above ground vegetables. That's the point of that, is to get all those nutrients. And a lot of the carnivore people would say, well, you can get all the nutrients from if you eat the complete animal. The problem is a lot of carnivores don't eat the complete animal. They just eat the muscle meats. And so there's a right way and a wrong way to do everything.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think as well, like you said, with like the organ meats and stuff, so nutritious and like so cheap. Like that's the thing, it doesn't have to be expensive. When people always think, oh, so expensive to change a diet. It's like if you're eating like chicken liver, for example, you don't need to eat that every day. That's like so cheap. And and like the wild fish, you don't need to have it every day. You can have sardines. Wild sardines are pretty cheap. And then another thing I always try and do as well is like I always have like a really wide range of veggies for like prebiotics for the gut microbiome. And I think the wider you can have it, and if you're trying to have like new greens all the time, like it just keeps your gut bacteria really wide, and you're able to do different, like you're able to kind of tolerate more because you build up that like strength of a wide microbiome in your gut kind of thing.
Yes. And
like all the sprouts and stuff.
yes, and the fermented foods, especially. I remember when I came to Australia the first time, I stayed with this couple in Sydney, and the lady's like, would you have some of my homemade probiotic? And I'm like, oh, what did you, it was sauerkraut, but it was just, she called it her homemade probiotic. I was like, that's cool. I like that.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Do you know what? I've actually stepped away from the fermented foods a bit because I was having, I don't know if you've heard of the histamine issues.
Yes.
Some people can have.
Yes.
I think that's normally only really if you're hammering all the probiotics. So if people are having all the histamine rich foods like the kombucha,
yes,
and then like the sauerkraut. I think I went through a phase, especially when I was making, do you remember when I used to make kimchi? Like years ago, I used to make kimchi. I think I remember telling you about that. But I'd make kimchi. I'd be having like smashing like a jar of kimchi,
yeah,
and the avocado and all the nuts and stuff, like the cured meats sometimes, which aren't great. But then it's like that histamine issue. So a lot of the time, especially for women as well, around ovulation, they're like they get really bad like water retention and like really bad anxiety and stuff.
yeah.
And it's like, you have a histamine. If you go and take some quercetin, like a natural antihistamine, it will just kind of like go. And it's normally because you've got like a gut issue from having too much. But saying that, I'm so with you. I love a good sauerkraut.
Yeah, good sauerkraut, a good I mean, there's all kinds of really good that if you can tolerate them. I had not heard about this aspect of that, so thank you. Dropped a mad knowledge bomb on here today, Charlotte.
No, so I killed it, didn't I?
No,
so what do you oh no, go carry on. You
go ahead, sweetie.
And I was going to say, do you still do the fasting, your daily fasting at the same time, or do you ever mix it up?
Oh, I mix it up, but currently I'm in the midst of doing a little challenge that I'm doing. I'm on like day 57 of a 100-day journey that I'm doing leading up to my 50th birthday, and so it's called to 50. And so every other day I'm fasting at least 24 hours right now. So I've done that 57 days where every other day I'm fasting at least a block of 24 hours in a row, which is nothing for me. Like I've done 21-day fasting several times. Did an 18-day fast earlier this year. So I mean, I can easily fast. My body's made for it. I've kind of trained it. But yeah, the day to day when I'm not on this challenge, I easily fast 18 hours. It's 18 hours. Like you said, you eat 1 or 2 meals. You don't really need to eat more than that. So I leave my window wide open and sometimes push it further. But yeah, currently 24 hours. I've gone as long as 32 hours on the sabbatical. And I like that. I like that kind of every other day. Okay, you're going to end at your breakfast time, stop eating, and then eat breakfast time the next day. And that's 24 hours of fasting. And so, yeah, I find great benefit to it. And of course, I wrote a book about that. And there's benefits that if you're not purposeful in trying to include some fasting in there, you're missing out. Like, and when I'm done with this challenge, I'm going to do probably 3-day, 5-day, 7-day fasting on how I feel. Just because I know the benefits. How did you find fasting, by the way?
Oh, how did I first discover it?
Yeah.
I think I was in Sydney and I went into this health shop and this guy, he was like, I just had like a massive lunch and he was like, you've got fungal overgrowth. He was like, you need to try fasting. And I was just like, oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then he goes, try and give it a go. Try not to have dinner. Just try. And I went and like I'd had like a steak in my fridge, like this grass-fed steak, and I was really looking forward to it. And I was like, oh, maybe I should try. And I tried to fast, and it was like so hard, and I had this headache, and I was like just like almost crying because I couldn't have this steak because I was so hungry. And I was like, oh my God, like, why can't I should be able to fast. Like, it's just dinner. Like, why can't I fast? And then I started to get really into it. I was like, no, I'm going to do this. I was like, I want to fast a full day. And then I'd like as I started to do it, and like I went more like low carb, I just found it easier. And then I just got into as well, like every now and then I do like the 3-day fast, the 5-day fasts.
Yeah.
And I remember, like, you know how they like fasting because you feel all fast on it. And I'd be like completely flying on like day 2 or 3. And I was like, and I think like I'd be so quick, like thinking that my mind was like really quick and stuff.
Yeah.
I actually haven't done a fast for a while. Hey, I'm going to be doing one soon and it's going to be painful.
I have been on podcasts like day 12 of a fast, and like on other people's podcasts, and they would do me, and I would just be, answering questions. They're like, "Oh, you're really sharp." And I'm like, "Yeah," and I have for 12 days. They're like, "What?" Like they're shocked.
They can't believe it. They're like, "Oh, how do you not even have breakfast? Like, you must feel like lightheaded or something."
Right.
Like,
As long as you mind your electrolytes and your hydration, you can fly through. I don't recommend longer than 7 days. Now, 5 to 7 days is a nice little sweet spot. 3 days definitely for the autophagy and some of the other benefits, but 5 to 7, if you get to 3, you can get 5 to 7 because it's pretty easy after 3. And you feel like you never have to eat again. You have moments, but for the most part, you're like, wow, how much of my eating is habit versus me actually needing this food, because I feel great in like day 5 or 6 of a fast. And it's amazing.
I love it.
I find fasting, you'll find this interesting. I was very much going crazy town, when I first heard about intermittent fasting. And so I interviewed Dr. Tom Seyfried, the big cancer researcher out of Boston College. And this was way back in like 2008, 2009. And at the very end of my interview talking about keto and cancer, he said, Jimmy, if you want to prevent cancer, go on a 7 to 10 day fast once a year. And I was just like, wait, what? Because I was shocked. We were at the end of the interview. I was ready to go. And that's all the time we have for the Living La Vida Low Carb show. And I was like, because it was just so stunning. But that stuck with me. And I was like, maybe I should reconsider this fasting thing. And that's what I did in wanting to do longer fasts. And I actually did a 7-day fast. I did all the wrong things. I had diet soda. I did kombucha. I did all these things thinking I needed them. And it was, I made it 6.5 days. I got all the way to the Sunday, and I did the communion at church, the little cup of the stuff, and my blood sugar dropped and I was crashing. I'm like, I gotta eat, but I'm like so close to the end of 7 days. Anyway, that was fun to write about. But Dr. Seyfried put me in his book, something to cancer, approach to cancer, is what it's called, about my attempt. And so that was my first attempt at a really fast, and it was hard. Don't.
Yeah. It's hard.
Salt
Yeah,
and
I think.
your friend.
Yeah, no, I think I was going to say, I definitely fasted too much as a woman when I got really into it.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of women can do that. Like, not just women, but I was fasting so much and I got really skinny at one point, and it was just so unhealthy. But now I know as well from all my like mental health stuff, there was like a lot of trauma and sadness there in the fasting. So I think as well, like, that's something to be aware of. Hey. And not fasting if you're like a low weight for as long, like you don't need to a lot of the time.
Right. And I tell you, most people can get the benefits of fasting from just doing intermittent fasting. Skip that meal, like that friend was telling you. Just skip the one meal and make it. And if most people did that, Charlotte, I think they would get most of the benefits of fasting. Maybe you're not getting as much of the autophagy, but you don't really need to do that a whole lot either. Maybe a couple times a year, do a 3-day fast, and you get that autophagy. But yeah, there are certain people that are very good fasters. I actually have run some genetic markers. Who was it? Dr. William Davis told me when I was writing my book, cholesterol clarity. He said, Jimmy, you've got a high lipoprotein little a. And because your LP little a is higher, you in a tribe would be the one that would survive a famine, because I'm built to fast. And that always stuck well, that, okay, lipoprotein little a, it's a cardiovascular risk marker when it's higher, but look at what it is in terms of survival. I would be the one, people with high lipoprotein little a would be the ones that would survive a famine.
That's so interesting, because mine's really high and I find it quite easy to fast. Yeah. It's actually fine. I mean, I'll probably do a 5-day at some point in the next few months. Because I've wanted to do it for ages, and I know I'm going to struggle, but it will still be, I think, I find it easier than other people.
When you do it, I will join you, and we will be for those 5 days.
Oh my God, I'd love that.
Cool. Well, guys, again, that is Charlotte Ivey. Go check her out over on Instagram. Say it one more time for me.
Lottie Amelia May.
Latte Amelia May, that's Lotteameliamay.
Thank you so much for having me.
Have you experienced the dreaded keto flu? Did you know that most of these symptoms are actually due to your body dumping excess electrolytes? This is where Element comes in. Element is a tasty electrolyte drink mix with everything you need and nothing you don't. That means lots of salt with no sugar. Element is formulated to help anyone with their electrolyte needs and is perfectly suited to folks following a keto, low-carb, or paleo diet. Element contains a science-backed electrolyte ratio, 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams potassium, and 60 milligrams of magnesium, with none of the junk, no sugar, no coloring, no artificial ingredients, no gluten, no fillers, no BS. Everyone needs electrolytes, especially those on low-carb diets, or if you practice intermittent or extended fasting, if you're physically active or sweat a lot. Add Element today and see how much better you feel and perform. Use the URL drinklmnt.com/Jimmy.